हाँ जी, शुरू करें तरू जी। ओके, सो आई विल जस्ट पुट इट ऑन द स्क्रीन। यहाँ पे थे पेज नंबर 12 फर्स्ट। यू वांट टू टेक एन ओवरलैप? ऐसे यहाँ से ले लेते हैं।
And the moment we recognize as our enlarging experience compels us to recognize that there are in the universe knowable realities beyond the range of the senses, and in man powers and faculties which determine rather than are determined by the material organs through which they hold themselves in touch with the world of the senses. That outer shell of a true and complete existence, the premise of materialistic agnosticism disappears. We are ready for a large statement and an ever developing inquiry. Really, it's as if वही जो topic था, groundlessness, ground as in, we touched upon that.
This is very nice. I think we discussed this last time. In this universe, there are knowable realities, but since we don't have the instruments which can know them, the sense organs are limited beyond the range of the senses. So just because I cannot sense it fully, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Things that we talk about, or say consciousness. If I don't have a tangible instrument which can measure consciousness, if I don't have that, it doesn't mean that consciousness is not there.
No, but what I find strange is that all of us have experienced the subtle things, right? The subtle emotions, the feeling of love, which defies logic, which doesn't have anything that I can hold on to.
Nothing concrete.
Nothing concrete. Yet that is acceptable because I think it's felt more commonly. So it is considered real. Nobody questions that. But when it comes to say, okay, I had this feeling or this intuition or this is what I saw in the dream, you could be classified as,
Figment
like
of your imagination.
हाँ, कि अरे
Yes,
आगे बढ़ो, it
yes.
doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
so that is pretty interesting that
हाँ.
how I limit, because even if we look at things factually, how they say कि we can just see between this wavelength and this here between this frequency, so we know that we are not seeing the full picture, and yet कोई बोल के दिखाए कि मेरे को नहीं समझ आ रही है ना, मतलब
Yeah.
so this is
And that's why we ignore such experiences, and they are not as concrete our life as the material usual things are somehow. जैसे मदर कहती है ना, if you have even a glimpse of, once you have this true experience, inner experience, you should make that your reality and know that if it can happen once, it can happen again and again and again, and we don't have to sink back to our routine life. Yeah. Quite a long one. ये पूरे ही पढ़ लो यार.
impossible तक है. हाँ, I'll just stop wherever.
Yeah.
But first, it is well that we should recognize the enormous, the indispensable utility of the very brief period of rationalistic materialism through which humanity has been passing. So, but first, it is well that we should recognize the enormous, the indispensable utility of the brief very brief period of rationalistic materialism through which humanity has been passing. So that is the base.
Well, and there was a necessity for that. Yeah.
For that vast field of evidence and experience which now begins to reopen its gates to us, can only be safely entered when the intellect has been severely trained to a clear austerity, seized on by unripe minds. It lends itself to the most perilous distortions and misleading imaginations, and actually in the past encrusted a real nucleus of truth with such an accretion of perverting superstitions and irrationalizing dogmas that all advance in true knowledge was rendered impossible.
I think this also relates with what Mother and Sri Aurobindo talk about education of the mind. And that it's important to train, since mind is like a tool that we have. So it's good, and it is good, as he says, that it is good at formation, organization, and putting intuitive knowledge in, like proper place. Everything has a proper place. So for that, it is good at. But if I don't hone this tool, don't train this tool, then I'm dumbed. So what he was sharing earlier, that yeah, this indispensable utility of this brief period of rationalistic, कि मुझे proof दिखाओ, so you are very factual कि अच्छा ये हुआ था, and then there are statistical analysis, and so you are not fooling yourself that this is not a fact. Whatever little instruments we have, this is a fact, and you are very ethical in taking into consideration. So एक ethics की भी बात आ गई ना इसमें कि जैसे in out I think countries other than India mostly, they have very particular rules about how to go about a roundabout, है ना? And I just have to stick to that rule. Whether there is camera or no camera doesn't matter. You know that if the person is coming from the left, I have to wait, and he has to go first through the roundabout, for example, something like that. So this has its own utility, because it avoids that blind impulsion. We are just following our impulsions. And then he says that this one. This vast field of evidence and experience, which now begins to reopen its gates to us, can only be safely entered when the intellect has been severely trained. Like now, it's a very nice tool, the mind, the intellect, and it sees the facts, it's able to, classify them. So we don't have to shun the minds, in the sense, shun the intellect, but we can train the intellect to be as close to truth as possible. And if not for a trained intellect, then it lends itself to distortions, and that I'm following my emotional impulses and I don't even know, I'm rationalizing it. And that's why I think one of the books, yeah, on Mother and Sri Aurobindo's yoga only, so they were saying that reason or rationalistic idea is like a regulator for emotions, because emotions have power, they are unruly, and if not trained and regulated, then they can take us here and there and like swaying like puppets. So it's, for a long time, it's good to be rational before the psychic takes the lead, and then that problem is resolved, कि क्या करें क्या ना करें types. And slowly we are seeing this. He's saying that otherwise we tend into go into superstition. So I think slowly, if we just look at the facts, even there we recognize the importance of meditation. अब आप देखो research, neuroscience research, so they very clearly now see that how brain is working with proper facts and evidence, that if you do meditation and if you don't do meditation. how well the mind is trained. So it's very obvious. I don't have to be, in any kind of superstition, blinding myself. So what in Savitri, I think Sri Aurobindo shares that spirit and matter are two poles, and usually they appear like two opposing poles. But even if you start with the matter, most materialistic thought, you can actually reach the truth. Either you tend to be a yogi, so you approach from the spirit aspect, or you tend to be a good scientist. So then you will approach from the matter aspect. Truth is only one, so you will reach it sooner or later.
But I think this, this also that everything is a ladder, right?
Hmm.
Like lot of times we criticize ourselves, right? That this is how I spent my last 20 years, or this is what I always have been doing. But his use of the word indispensable
Utility,
utility and
yeah.
enormous
Yeah, yeah.
of the brief period, although it doesn't feel brief, right? Depending on because we don't learn fast, na? Or at least that's what it feels like. Materialism, rationalistic materialism. And even I remember in the Da Vinci Code by Brahm, I don't know whoever, and even for Bhagavad Gita and all people say na that how when a person who's not connected, he would get nothing. But once you start knowing, once you have that connection, so many secrets, and that's how it's hidden in the Bible and stuff, so that it doesn't go into wrong hands, because that person would not understand anything. And you remember Jetson Ma was also talking about some people who can
Yeah, yeah,
get,
yeah.
not
They're
get,
called termas.
yeah,
Termas, texts. So people who get to know, matlab they make these texts or find these texts, they hide it behind the walls, for example. And then if a wise one appears, who is truly a wise one, he has the capacity to take it out from the wall. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. So it's not scientific fiction.
yeah,
It happens, and there was one of the tulkus, I think maybe Tulku Urgen Rinpoche, very famous one, who did this extracting of the termas in front of everyone so that people know that this can happen. And those texts are hidden because it, as you said, it should not fall into wrong hands. So only a person who has the siddhi or power would be able to get to it.
Yesterday I was reading something by the mother, and in that it was like somebody had asked her that do stones also have aspiration? And she was like, yes. I mean, she had explained it, and she was like, how stones have some stones have special powers, they have forces. People sometimes can use stones to predict the future. Matlab, it's not all just hearsay. It actually happens that they're able to take out that energy, or some stones are blessed and they go from generation to generation. And I think maybe that's why people wear stones and rings and all, they attract a specific kind of energy. But yeah, so basically, you remember once I shared from Auroville, there was this message that what do I do till the sun shines? And then it was like, make your garden ready so that when it wasn't sunshine, but when it actually comes, you're able to let it come. So it feels like this, na? That
Preparing the
preparing
field.
the field so that, yeah. What sentence creation though, na? Perverting superstitions and irrationalizing dogmas. That all advance in true knowledge was rendered impossible. As in, it feels like इसी में ही फंसे रहो, right? Distractions and diversions and yeah, okay. So it became necessary for a time to make a clean sweep at once of the truth and its disguise in order that the road might be clear for a new departure and a surer advance. The rationalistic tendency of materialism has done mankind this great service.
Nice. So as Sri Aurobindo says that nothing happens by chance, है ना? तो अब जैसे human evolution में we see that suddenly earlier people were following their what blind superstition and suddenly कि मुझे proof दिखाओ ये ये कैसे possible है. So it was all happening for a larger reason.
And again we come to this, no, that by mother again, that ego is the helper, ego is the bar. I don't know, all the things.
Reason is the helper,
That
reason
can
is the
be
bar.
true for each and everything, right? Like, but the problem is we don't know when to let go. When we cling, then that becomes, we stop growing or learning for that brief period of time. But otherwise, it feels again and again that everything is there to help us, but we need to know when to now step up, and that clinging, like they say, the source
clinging
of
to
all
reason,
suffering.
clinging to ego,
Because it has given me so much.
How can now I drop
now
it?
I know that this is it, and there is no it.
Yeah. I think that's why we talk about a leap of faith. That you actually kind of leap into this unknown without any reason, without, it appears very illogical. So intuition at times may appear very illogical. But as Sri Aurobindo says that in a still mind, when intuition dawns, you are compelled to follow it. जैसे श्री अरबिंदो का जो बताते हैं when he received the आदेश to go to Chandarnagar or wherever. Now to a logical minded person it would appear so bizarre, that oh my god, how can you just follow your whim or fancy, but he knows he has to go. And he also has to, I think that also can be called the power of faith, that he has this faith that now I am guided and if it has arisen in my consciousness, I have to go. So even reason has to be kept aside there. Actually, I also see this with my own disease. That to a rationalistic mind, to a logical mind, it would actually appear so weird that how with cancer you can live without getting your regular checks done and this done, running to showing to doctors, is everything okay? But it appears very insane, and I have interacted with a couple of people who just are doctors and they get to know and they say, are you not going in for any checks? Now again, I think it's a razor's edge on which one is walking, because even I don't know, but somehow there is a knowing that if I take care of my mental being, emotional being, I would get to know when things are to be done and when things are not to be done. Even if now I am now thinking about it, talking about it, it appears very bizarre that how can one do it? But somehow, yeah, whatever works. And this, I think, Anita Murjani's own case of this healing of level 4 thing by itself, big source healing by itself. Still, scientists are puzzled how it can happen.
For the faculties that transcend the senses, by the very fact of their being enmeshed in matter, mission to work in a physical body, put in harness to draw one car along with the emotional desires and nervous impulses, are exposed to a mixed functioning in which they are in danger of illuminating confusion rather than clarifying truth.
Yeah. So man is endowed with intuition, with the power to receive intuition, receive insights and great ideas. But since there is a mixture, because that, as if a diamond is put in mud, so that intuitive insight, the capacity that we have, it is put in mud. So it gets, what he says is, it more creates confusion कि अब मैं क्या करूँ, logically ये ठीक लग रहा है but अंदर से ये आवाज आ रही है, मतलब करो तो क्या करो. So it puts us in actually in confusion.
Especially in this mixed functioning, dangerous when men with unchastened minds and unpurified sensibilities attempt to rise into the higher domains of spiritual experience.
I think this also tells us the importance of purifying oneself. That without purification, continuous purification of the being, we can actually put ourselves and others in danger. And this is what happens with many gurus. They have siddhis, maybe they have powers, but it's mixed with the ego consciousness, and they themselves are not sure what is really what. So मुझे लगता है कि ये ऊपर से आदेश है, but actually वो मेरा ईगो का आदेश है ना, but पता ही नहीं लगता. It's so mixed. So this continuous vigilance on oneself, that I think that really keeps us grounded, if one can say, just like we see at Tenzing Palmo. I think it's a beautiful demonstration of a grounding, that so much of experience, so much of insight, and yet continued work on oneself.
Yesterday in Friday Study Circle, we read some text in which they had described that there was this saint who had achieved lot of siddhis, and he had gone to his disciples' place. They had arranged a huge dinner for him. And there, the disciples said, "Ki, do something for us, show us something." So early, he didn't want to, but he said, "Okay, fine." So the food was on a low table, and he said, "Okay, remove the tables, but leave the tablecloth and the food." So the disciples said, "That's impossible." He said, "Okay, do it, do it. I'm standing here." So they pulled out the table, but the food did not drop. And as soon as that happened, suddenly, it's as if that his heart was on fire. And he said that I will never ever have disciples again, because, I have done a very blunderous mistake, because these siddhis, they have to be used as in through the divine. There has to be no I in it. So it was said later on that basically if you see a blind person and you can cure him, but if you cure him, he could be in turmoil. But if you just want to say this thing that, may he be cured, and if he has to be cured, he will be cured. So there has to be no I, but that passing of that grace, if that is there. Because as soon as the I comes, you're gone.
I think that's why, say for example, Tenzin Palmo or Mother Sri Aurobindo, they never really showed their whatever powers. Of course, in instances it may have happened, definitely, but not to show it, that look, I am an enlightened one, and this is the power I have.
I think probably it would depend on, how they talk about the type of avatar it is. Say a Sai Baba.
क्या कह रहे थे आप? And I think also this kind of interference, too much of interference through your powers, and so this, as you I think were sharing, that it maybe the person has to go through that period. Maybe the person, for that person growth consciousness, it's required that he goes through the turmoil. So if you do interfere too much just because you have the power, I think वही जो आप कह रहे थे ना, that person may not be ready for it.
And what I was saying was that they say that there are different avatars for different reasons. Yes, Sai Baba, he did so many miracles. Probably it was needed at that time, right? And I think in Shri Aurobindo's case, it said that I'm not here for miracles, right? He was here to pull that force of, है ना? तो फिर उस हिसाब से to true. And I find it really, very applaudable that, say, I was in Auroville and they had that dawn fire. And I could imagine that, not taking names, but if I was in some other place, I could imagine that what all could have been done to enhance that experience. Say if it was some other guru, like the aura that would be created, there would be some drums in the background, how they want to kind of nudge at each of your senses so that you have that larger than life experience and you say, wow, that experience I will never forget. And throughout, and we have seen this over the years, there is no conversion, there is no forcing. It's just, it's like it sells for itself to who it's made for.
Drama.
So there is no selling, there is no creating of that ambience so that you feel that wow, like there's no TRP, there's no nothing, there's no need for that.
And I think it's also very saddening on one part that we may really have many what people say, कि meditation में बैठे और blue color दिखा या ये violet color and this color, and like something still doesn't change in my consciousness. Still I am bonded to my ego self, so that shift doesn't happen even after so many experiences. ये पढ़ लिया वो पढ़ लिया, शिफ्ट ही नहीं है, मतलब बिल्कुल. अब उसको अपना तमगा बना दिया. अब स्पिरिचुअल एक्सपीरियंस अरे तेरे को वायलेट नहीं दिखा, मेरे को तो वायलेट दिखा. And then you check the books कि अच्छा वायलेट का मीनिंग ये है, and then it gives you a push, कि वाओ मुझे वायलेट दिखा. It's really strange.
But I find it like today I had gone for some session in the morning, and when I was when I was coming back, I was like really kind of feeling very peaceful. And suddenly somebody crossed me in a very bad manner. I was like, oh my God, who taught him driving? And in a second, I was like, let's see how easy it is to it's like that right now. I'm like, oh, life is divine, and then one person did one thing, and I'm like, what's wrong with him? Like to see that so. Right there, it's just like I mean, it's so easy to lose it.
It's so easy to lose it, and I think one just needs constant reminders, because there is enough to pull us down again and again to make us sure that this material reality, what you see or hear through the senses and what the mind interprets through the senses, is your destiny. This is what you are made for. And then you are now aware of a parallel inner reality, है ना. तो मुझे लगता है कि one needs a very constant reminding that which I am listening and hearing from the outer senses and the mind is interpreting in one way, there is a reality other than that. There is something more than that. And to ignore that interpretation and to bring yourself back to कौन सी vocal वाली? So why I was talking about this is that, for example, one is doing this practice of bringing your mind to the present moment again and again, to the breath, to the rising and falling of the tummy, keeping things simple basically, not to get lost in the interpretation of the mind. And then every now and then there is one interpretation of the mind which just pulls you so strongly, that one says that how can you not buy into that? This
Yeah.
thing, this thing. And then you have, as a reminder, I was talking of, and I think it's also, for me, it relates with self love, that how much I now love my simplicity, that no matter how attractive that thought may be, I am not buying into that. I'm not buying. So this simplicity in the present moment is my reality. So as if one has to struggle, almost fight one's way back to the present moment. And there are enough distractions to attract you, to glitter you into, this drama and that drama. यहाँ से ये मिलेगा, वहाँ से वो मिलेगा. But also that day we were talking of disenchantment, that if you really had enough encounters of that sort, that you now know that if you put your head in samsara or the world, or wanting from material existence, it just, very soon after pleasure you get pain. Very soon pleasure turns into suffering. And how long will you run after that? So if, I think this comes to me again and again, that if now I have ran enough, if now I have banged my heads on the walls again and again, then I will be compelled to bring my mind to the present moment, and not to buy into the drama of the stories, which appears so real.
You see what you're saying about, when you're sitting,
Mm.
I mean, how it stumbles me. I mean, I get stumbled every time that how, it's like, okay, right now is not thinking time.
Mm.
Right now, I'll focus on my breath.
Mm.
And I mean, I don't know how a simple thought
Mm.
gets so attractive at that
Mm.
moment, and when you see yourself going down that road,
Mm.
it's surprising. Matlab,
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know the word to use.
Mm.
Like one cannot factually say that this will happen again and again. It is beyond logic.
Yeah. And what he was sharing, can you close the door? किया तो था मैंने push. So that Gerardo we were listening to that day, Gerardo Aboud, he was
Yes.
talking about mindfulness, है ना? So he was saying that mindfulness is the rope and mind is the sheep, and we have to keep the rope very short, because if you really keep the rope long, then the mind will wander away in all directions, है ना? So the moment I get to know that the wandering has happened, just very non-judgmentally bringing it back to the present moment,
And I think for the same reason, Deepa Ma's teaching about rising, falling, thinking, because as soon as you realize the thinking has begun, if you shift your thing, you catch it.
Yeah, you
Otherwise,
catch
it's very easy to
go down the drain,
go down that
slope.
slope.
Yeah. True. So the moment the wandering happens, you, as she says, no, tell yourself, gone away, gone away.
So, but for that, it's like it's in light.
हाँ,
It's not hidden. It's not out of ignorance or darkness that you're going. Now it's your choice. Come back.
Yeah. And also this going away now doesn't appear enchanting to you, you know? Because if it appears enchanting to me, then I must actually follow the course. That's what I feel. Otherwise, बार बार मैं कोशिश, mind उधर जा रहा है, मैं कोशिश कर रही हूँ रोकने की, तो वो नहीं चलेगा. So I think that conviction slowly has to arise, that now this going away where the mind wants to go, I have really had that enough, haven't I? And if not, if that appears that interesting, I think then we cannot stop ourselves but to have experiences.
I wonder, but if that there is any end to it, if not for some discipline, and if I just talking about myself, if I just allow myself to go into everything that feels so enchanting when say I'm trying to focus on my breath, unless I put some, like it said, that is a mindfulness is the rope. I don't know if it will ever stop. or slow down, or the rope would come down if I allow myself every time.
No, but you will come back because towards when you follow that road,
Yeah.
the drama that appears very promising, very soon the suffering will arise. So it's like a very common thing for each human being that you cannot have fulfillment through anything that is there in the world.
But even if not looking for fulfillment, these are distractions.
Distractions
right?
are,
And a lot of times there's no end to it.
Hmm.
But one has to get up oneself that okay, let them be there.
No, if one has developed that conviction, then you will be able to compel the mind to be in the present moment. That this, whatever is right now, is enough for me. This is enough. You know? Because the mind again and again becomes restless and says, no, this is not enough, but that. You know, so I think our experiences makes us convinced that there is nothing there.
Like your favorite Kabir, when you don't say it, a lot of times in circles, there are other people who quote you and say,
Really?
like Monica says, Daudat.
Oh God.
So, but
How
it's a good one to remember
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
So what is it? Why don't you? No, seriously, say.
So he says, दौड़त दौड़त दौड़िया जहां लगी मन की दौड़ थके मन स्थिर भया तो वस्तु ठौर की ठौर. So that I ran and ran and ran and ran and ran in all the directions where the mind pulled me. But when I was tired of running, I think this tiredness also is very interesting, required very much. When I was tired of running, and when the mind settled down, then I realized that that thing that I was looking for there was all the time with me. Was to thor ki thor. It was here with me.
After reading this, how sometimes you wonder that why are there not more people who would want to pursue spirituality or want to know, but you see this, like, is the mixed functioning dangerous when men with unchastened minds and sensibilities rise into higher domains? So as in, that is also good.
Yeah.
That if you don't want to, don't get into
Yeah.
it because you will just
Yeah.
make another Pythagoras theorem.
True.
Yeah.
Very true. So everything has a proper place. Yeah. Every person. I think that's why mother would say, maybe this connects here, that people who are too much in the material and they are settled there, it's better not to wake them up, like not to poke them, because they lose their balance. Yeah. It appears very interesting, the words coming up. Unsubstantial cloud and semi-brilliant fog. Pardon.
In what regions of unsubstantial cloud and semi-brilliant fog, or a murk visited by flashes which blind more than they enlighten, do they not lose themselves by that rash and premature adventure? An adventure necessary indeed in the way in which nature chooses to effect her advance, for she amuses herself as she works, but still for the reason rash and premature. And I think this goes with it, just to end this, like it is necessary, therefore, that advancing knowledge should base herself on a clear, pure, and disciplined intellect.
Yeah.
All that glitter is not gold, kind of, that is.
I think this happens even if yeah. So I think we start impure only, right? And we remain impure for a long time. But somehow even that serves a purpose, because, for example, I know people who are in spirituality, want to walk the spiritual path, but there is very strong sense of I, that what would I get from the spiritual path? What kind of a label, what kind of an image? So the mind that I start with, that material physical mind, which always consumes and want to become more and more, actually for a long time I feel that even on spiritual path, that mind doesn't change. The shift in consciousness is not there, and yet I feel that people suffer through that. Suffering has to come, and through that they change, and realize that I have been impure. I've actually been wanting more fame and name, even on in the name of spiritual path. And that happens for a long, long time. It happens unless we really suffer enough. I feel suffering is really a fail-safe mechanism, because you can't, with your egos high up, you can't go that long, too much into it.
I think that's why it's so beautifully said, na, which blind more than they enlighten.
Yeah, yeah.
They make you worse off. You see even less than what you were able to see before.
पहले तो कम से कम फैक्ट पे अटके हुए थे, तो अब तो फैक्ट को भी तुम साइड करने के लिए तैयार हो, है ना? यू आर रेडी टू ब्लाइंड योर सेल्फ टू द फैक्ट्स, एंड कुछ एक कंफ्यूज सा मिक्सचर चल रहा है जिसमें तुम बाय इन करने के लिए तैयार हो. What horrid confusion वैसे, really, नहीं? I think in prayers, when meditations, Mother talks about this confusion again and again. What a mixture she talks about that. Oh my God, that God save us from this mixture. Yeah.
And I think this thing also we see na, ki how it's amusing. Like how they were saying that a bodhisattva would find it amusing that how you are running behind what. Like,
Yeah.
first it's like painful, and then when you see, I think the bigger picture, the divine humor that they talk about.
And with, I think, Tenzin Palmo, how she again and again talks about this, she said that we human beings are really stupid, very, very stupid.
But this also reminds me, I read somewhere that day that for all kind of art, there is you and there is something else. Like say if you're a painter, you and your paints and a canvas. So there is a distinction. But in dance, you become the dance. Right? There is no other tool. And that's why they said that gods, this is a Shiva, is shown to dance, and that's why it's like there is nothing else but him. So if there's suffering, it's he who's suffering through you. If you are feeling joy, he's he who's feeling. So he's not different. He's dancing through you.
Beautiful.
And I think that's why the humor is also, otherwise one would say कि मैं यहाँ रो रहा हूँ, right? Like I am here in pain and you are saying it's humor. Because he is feeling that pain through you.
And also, it's very interesting how we buy into this idea of there is a separate being who is divine, and here I am suffering. Now, how this is so conditioned, the way we live, कि तू ये है और मैं ये हूँ. Since the idea of bodies is there, कि you end there, I end here. So that is how we look at the divine also, that he is there somewhere in his heavens, and look how I am suffering. So we humanize the divine.
And lot of times after tragedies, people play that blame thing that what kind of a god he is, why would he want me to?
Yeah. And we don't realize that this is a torture that we are doing on ourselves. Doing this separation thing, कि तू वहाँ बैठा है और मैं यहाँ हूँ, तो उसमें फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू आर मेकिंग हिम लिमिटेड, है ना? क्योंकि अगर वो वहाँ बैठा है तो उसकी एक कोई लिमिट हो गई ना, तो आपने डिवाइन जो अनंत था उसको आपने लिमिट कर दिया और अपने आप को भी छोटा कर दिया. While if we have the humility to say that he is one with me, but maybe I don't know yet.
Yeah.
That is also a possibility. कि just because मेरा instrumentation थोड़ा खराब है. So if one is not ready to take these flashes, it's better not to have them. Almost appears like that. बट यहाँ पे ना मतलब मुझे लगता है कि काफी फ्री विल की भी फिर बात आ जाती है कि अच्छा ऐसे तो तुम किसी को बोलो ही नहीं कि आओ सत्संग में आओ, है ना. मतलब वी कैन टॉक अबाउट दिस ना कि ऐसे तो जो अभी अपने रैशनल में और मटीरियलिज्म में फंसा हुआ है, तुम उसको कभी कंपेल ही मत करो, ऐसे तो कभी बुलाओ ही नहीं उसको सत्संग पे आने के लिए, अच्छी किताबें पढ़ने के लिए, क्योंकि वो रेडी नहीं है. तो कब रेडी होगा? आई थिंक दिस ऑल्सो क्रिएट्स दिस कंफ्यूजन. But then we don't have to worry about that.
आई थिंक वही जो अभी जैसे बात हुई थी ना कि इफ इट्स गुड फॉर हिम ही है ना, मतलब हैविंग डूइंग एवरीथिंग बट हैविंग दैट faith that he'll join when he'll join, she'll join when she'll join. Because otherwise, sometimes you start feeling that thing, na? Why can't they see? Why can't so?
And while what if we just accept them the way they are, and still whatever I think in whatever ignorance we may be, we always are full of gifts. It's every person is full of gifts. It's not that वो इतनी कालिक में है कि और इतनी कालिक में होगा तो डेफिनेटली दे विल बी एन अपराइज फॉर हिम ऑल्सो. और कालिक में तो हम सभी हैं ना.
It is necessary, therefore, that advancing knowledge should base herself on a clear, pure, and disciplined intellect. It is necessary, too, that she should correct her errors sometimes by a return to the restraint of sensible fact, the concrete realities of the physical world. The touch of earth is always reinvigorating to the son of earth, even when he seeks a supra-physical knowledge. It may even be said that the supra-physical can only be really mastered in its fullness, to its height we can always reach when we keep our feet firmly on the physical.
Beautiful. I think this would also relate with the bringing the mind to the body, to home, and having that physical touch.
I think ये थोड़ा वही हुआ जब we were talking about deeper mind coming back to a sensible fact. Gone. Like it's a fact and using that mindfulness का आप जो रोग बोल रहे थे restrain. Right, I have the concrete realities of its physical.
And concrete reality of the physical may be the rising and falling of the tummy, for example, or the touch of the breath. And it's amazing how they are linked. What he says that whoever seeks the supraphysical, beyond the physical, he can actually master it while having very firm grounding on the physical.
And अभी जो आप अभी भी बोल रहे थे ना कि how do you know if you're harming, if you're not, this also answers that. ना the touch of earth, मतलब the truth is always, although on the face it might not look that it has done any good, it's always invigorating to the son of earth.
Yeah.
And which we all are.
Yeah. So how amazing I think it's made that उधर जाना चाह रहे हो जो कि यहाँ के परे लग रहा है, और यही वाला जो टच है वो तुम्हें वहां ले जा, it has the grounding, it has the stability, being in touch with the present, it has the stability to take you there. And this also gets reflected in physical manifestation while we are higher buildings, higher floors are being made, and we need a very firm grounding if we want a building that is too high.
And this again, how we need a constant check, right? She should correct her errors, like the things that I stand on, I make them my crutches, and I say that no, this is my ground. So whenever we are making those errors, those need to be corrected, and you have to return to the sensible fact that what do I want? I want to stick on a reason, or do I want to evolve? Do I want to grow? Right? So that push and pull. And somehow it also is giving this air about being humble, na? Humility, that keep your head low, na? And we keep our feet firmly on the physical.
Yeah. What Upanishad is this? What is this? Number 2. Pad.
Mundaka.
Okay. Mundaka Upanishad. जानना पड़ेगा। क्या नहीं, वो चेक कर सकते थे अभी, राइट के राइट।
Earth is his footing. Earth is his footing, says the Upanishad, whenever it images the self that manifests in the universe. Whenever it images, whenever it makes the image, whenever it images the self that manifests in the universe, when it becomes the image.
I think when the Upanishad images the self that manifests in the universe, वो बात हो रही है ना? Says the Upanishad, whenever it images. Upanishad की बात हो रही है ना? That the Upanishad is imaging the self that is manifesting in the universe. I don't know, just.
And it is certainly the fact that the wider we extend and the surer we make our knowledge of the physical world, the wider and surer becomes our foundation for the higher knowledge, even for the highest, even for the Brahma Vidya.
That's true, Madhuri. Coming from science also, it would be the more we go into matter and research. So we are actually building a nice base for what is beyond. क्योंकि टेस्टिंग कर करके देख रहे हैं ना, अच्छा ये भी टेस्ट कर लिया, ये भी टेस्ट कर लिया, ये भी टेस्ट कर लिया. I think there it comes again what Mother says in prayers and meditations, that the divine victory is certain. So whether I approach from the matter, whether I approach through the spirit, it's only truth I can find. There is nothing else. So just like physics की बात करते हैं ना, quantum physics की, so this border that appears because of my senses, if you go deeper electronic, subatomic level, you see that there is nothing solid here, and it's just my senses that make it appear so hard and solid.
There was this book I read, it was like autobiography, fictional and stuff. So the lady goes to, say, I think it was Indonesia or somewhere, where she met a pandit kind of a person, and under him she studied a bit, and he was teaching her some meditations to how to rise your consciousness. So she asked him that instead of rising, what if they fall? So he said same thing, but reaching it to rising is more fun. There's more joy, but they end at the same place. So like
Interesting.
and in our mantras also, na, there is this thing, na, as up, so below lines. It's all the same, and yet we feel ये ऊपर उठना है और ये
Yeah.
नीचे गिरना है.
आई थिंक वो किसका है, वो शिव जी वाला एक कोई एपिसोड है ना, जिसमें वो ब्रह्मा जी विष्णु जी को कुछ डाउट होता है, नहीं वो एंड देखना चाहते हैं कि शिव जी कहाँ खत्म हो रहे हैं ना, तो वन गोज अप अपवर्ड्स
Okay, I know.
टुवर्ड्स द त्रिशूल, आई गेट एक खंबा होता है शायद,
Okay.
so one of them, maybe Brahma ji, he goes up and the other one goes down,
Then they meet.
and then it's it's like all same, some not exact episode in my mind. मतलब वो बेसिकली ये बताना चाह रहे थे कि शिव जी कहीं एंड नहीं हो रहे, उधर जा रहे हो तो चलते जा रहे हो चलते जा रहे हो, इधर जा रहे हो तो भी चलते जा रहे हो. You want to take this up? हमारा last.
And ये जो हम बार बार बोलते हैं कि it feels that I'm moving around in circles, है ना? कि I'm reliving and reliving and reliving. Somewhere it feels that is also making the base stronger, na? कि now when probably after 100 hits, 101th I might not want it at all. वो 1% भी वो affinity नहीं रह जाएगी. And are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Kind that this enchantment is complete once all the enchantments have been seen till their end, or for this grace that intervenes and opens the eyes. So, in emerging, therefore, out of the materialistic period of human knowledge, we must be careful that we do not rashly condemn what we are leaving or throw away even one little of its gains before we can summon perceptions and powers that are well grasped and secure to occupy their place.
So not to badmouth reason also and rationalistic thought, because it has held us, you know.
But sometimes for me, I've seen that bad mouthing helps me in stepping back. Because sometimes I feel I'm too tight with it, I'm too close to it. And I'm not saying it's the right way, but when I say no, you are bad, then it helps me in actually seeing it for what it is. Because otherwise there's just too much. And rather, we shall observe with respect and wonder the work that atheism has done for the divine and admire the service that agnosticism has rendered in preparing the illimitable increase of knowledge. I don't know what I was reading on Incarnate Word there or somewhere else, and it said that somebody was praying that thank God you have made me an atheist. The paradox, right? And you're thanking God that you have made me such that I don't believe in you. So
वही बात है बार बार जो निकल के आती है कि एवरीथिंग हैज इट्स प्रॉपर प्लेस, and it's not the thing that is bad, but when we use it out of place, when the psychic is in front and still I'm compelled to listen to reason, bounded by it or being in bondage, I think there it we have to consider कि अब क्या किसकी प्लेस है, तो भैया तूने इतना साथ दिया, थैंक यू, बट अब कुछ और, some other phase has to start, new phase has to begin. I think in वो जो मदर का प्ले है ना, जो ascent to truth, उसमें वो जो लास्ट कपल दैट गोज
हाँ,
अहेड
हाँ,
एंड टेक्स दिस लीप ऑफ
leap
फेथ
of
जहाँ
faith,
कुछ
हाँ,
नहीं दिख
हाँ,
रहा,
हाँ,
there is like this open
हाँ,
vast space, you have
yeah,
no idea whether you'll be
हाँ,
alive or not, and they take the plunge.
yeah. I thought of it when your juices phrase before also, na leap of faith.
Leap of faith वाला, हाँ,
Yeah,
yeah. I also thought it then.
yeah. Illimitable increase of knowledge.
So एक तरफ से हम कह रहे हैं विश्वास नहीं है, विश्वास नहीं है,
हाँ,
और दूसरी तरफ से एक्चुअली में काम तुम डिवाइन का ही कर रहे हो,
हाँ,
बिकॉज व्हेन यू आर स्टडीइंग मैटर,
हाँ,
ये
हाँ,
बोल के कि मुझे प्रूफ
हाँ,
दिखाओ, प्रूफ
हाँ,
दिखाओ,
हाँ,
तो
हाँ,
जस्ट जनरेटिंग मोर एंड मोर रॉ मटेरियल.
इससे और कितना ग्रेटिट्यूड हो जाता है ना,
हाँ.
अदरवाइज वी फील कि वो सो लाइव्स आर बीइंग वेस्टेड एंड दैट्स अ वेरी गुड टेक अवे फॉर मी.
मतलब ऐसा लगता है इसको पढ़ के कि तुम चाहो या ना चाहो,
हाँ,
तुम सर्वेंट तो फिर भी डिवाइन के ही हो, मतलब,
हाँ,
और
हाँ,
यू नो द डिवाइन इज
हाँ,
ऑल.
हाँ, हाँ,
If not the servant, then the divine is all. Because many people may not agree with the term servant.
हाँ,
मतलब वो मानने में भी बड़ी मुश्किल होती है ना कि अच्छा, मैं चाहे इस जगह जाऊँ या चाहे उस जगह जाऊँ, मैं डिवाइन का ही सर्वेंट हूँ, कैसे कैसे.
well said.
I think when we arrive at this point, then suddenly the doership falls away. ना कि एक्चुअली में मैं कर रहा हूँ, मैं कर रहा हूँ,
Yeah,
मेरे करे हो जाएगा, या जो भी हो जाएगा जो तुम्हारे दिमाग में है.
yeah.
And then you suddenly realize.
In our world, error is continually the handmaid and pathfinder of truth. For error is really a half truth that stumbles because of its limitations. Often it is truth that wears a disguise in order to arrive unobserved near its goal. Well, if it could always be as it has been in the great period we are leaving, the faithful handmaid, severe, conscientious, conscientious, clean-handed, luminous within its limits, a half-truth and not a reckless and presumptuous aberration.
मतलब what a paradox. मतलब he's putting together error and truth. That truth is a disguise. Error is a disguise for truth. How interesting. Wow. The इस पे मतलब if the mind doesn't boggle at this,
I think what we hear so often that everything that we are doing is for contentment and peace, right? We are wanting for that, but all the things, all the mistakes that we make, at least kahi to kahi you're not standing. वो फाउंडेशन बिल्ड हो रहा है और इस है ना मतलब whatever like you were saying that the work is his because truth we would not accept or recognize so whatever that carrot on the stick that whatever works and of course all those things have limitations so after a point you have to keep that aside and say okay this not this but that took you somewhere na, that made you
yeah.
reach.
I think what comes to me is this image of stairs. Like each stair is very limited,
Yeah.
and it has its limitation. It can't take you much higher, but it is taking you one step forward.
This last one, if it could always be as it has been in the great period we are living. The great period we are living?
I think maybe referring to the period of rationalism
Yeah.
that we are living, right?
Yeah, yeah. With the faithful handmaid, luminous within its limits. अपनी limits में तो it's a star.
It has
ना?
a place. Yeah.
A half truth and not a reckless and presumptuous aberration. So it's not that it is meaningless, it's a half truth. Till we reach whatever we are doing, are steps that are taking us one step more, one step more. Yeah.
Beautiful, yes. वो सावित्री का आपने कनेक्ट कर दिया, जो एक लाइन है ना, our errors are his steps on the way.
Yeah.
So it connects rightly here. And his is truth. So error is actually taking us closer and closer to truth. What he says here, that truth wears a disguise in order to arrive nearer to its goal. So truth is wearing a disguise of error. Wow, amazing. हाँ, क्या बोल रहे थे?
Once somebody, had given this analogy that if somebody is wanting to get into this, right, like spirituality and wanting to know about them, basically there would be people who would be there to stop them because people don't like change, and because they are running after that person to stop him, like like a game of kabaddi. Like, yeah, they are after you, after you, after you, and before they realize they have crossed the line, and all of you have crossed the line, because then you have been wanting, they have been wanting to stop, but you are moving in the same direction. So it doesn't matter how you get there. है ना?
यहाँ खत्म करें आज? हाँ.
So this was page 14.
You will remember.